Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS-collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 289. Today, I'm joined by Jacob Emery, and we're talking Kentucky and Indiana public land bucks and water access. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. To all the dads out there, happy Father's Day. Hope you had a good past Sunday. Got to do whatever it is that you wanted to do. Golf, check trail cameras, shoot your bow, maybe mow the grass in peace, maybe with a malted beverage in hand while you're riding the lawnmower around. Beautiful weekend here in Pennsylvania. I mean, couldn't ask for a better Father's Day weekend. I think Saturday was kind of overcast and windy, but I want to say it got like no higher than like the mid 60s. It was like perfect. It reminded me of like a nice fall day that was a little overcast, some wind. Like it was actually felt like the perfect day to be bow hunting somewhere, quite honestly. So I took full advantage of that and spent pretty much the entire day outside, shot my bow a bunch, actually got into the saddle into a tree in the backyard, and took some reps from the saddle just to kind of start getting ready. Was able to kind of extend out, to some distance in my yard. I think I have about a 55-yard shot in my yard is about the furthest that I can stretch out. So shot some distance, getting ready for the upcoming archery season, or the Idaho elk hunt. Although I don't think I'll be taking any crazy long shots where I'm going to be hunting, because I'm not hunting necessarily in the high desert. I'm going to be in the area where there are a lot of dark timber, put it that way. So not going to have a super far shot. Probably, to be quite honest, I'll probably have further shot opportunities, or would potentially have further shot opportunities in Kansas. So maybe I'm just kind of prepping for Kansas. And then the other thing that I did this weekend, didn't do anything in the timber, didn't get any additional trail cameras out and stuff like that. I'll probably do that maybe next weekend. I think it's supposed to be nice again next weekend, so I'll probably get the final few out before I head out on vacation over the 4th. I usually like to have everything out for velvet by like the 4th of July. That's, because July is that month where you're going to really see the difference between I guess the men and the boys, if you will, of the deer world. And so I like to have all my cameras out then. Like I said before, I have most everything out. There's just a handful that I have to yet put out, and they're kind of easier access ones to put out. So didn't get out into the timber at all. But the one thing that I did do is I've had this bow I've had it for years, and I don't really ever shoot it. I'll dabble with it once in a while, but I broke out the recurve and started flinging arrows again with the recurve. Now, I'm not going to dive into like the trad world, and I'm not going to hunt with it this year. But I think my long-term plan is I want to start I guess, shooting it more often and getting more and more familiar with it. Because at some point I would like to try, I would like to hunt at least a season, and if I really like it, maybe I would continue to hunt that way. But I would like to kind of add it into, to my repertoire, and how maybe, I don't know, maybe this year it's like if I end up getting the monkey off my back and filling a PA tag earlier in the season and have some doe tags to fill, maybe I'll break out the trad bow, and do that as long as I'm feeling confident with it. But I hadn't busted it out in a while, and left a lot to be desired in the in the shooting that I did this past weekend. But it felt good to get it out, and it was just kind of fun. And other than that, just kind of in full swing of starting to try to get my legs into shape, where they need to be to get ready for the Western hunt. And that's kind of the other stuff that I did this past weekend, was just starting to work on that stuff. I do have some additional gear that I need to pick up. So I've been kind of looking at that. I need a tent, like a good backcountry tent, probably a 2-man, just so I have some room to stow gear while I'm out there, in the Idaho mountains. And then, what else? There was something else. Oh, I actually need like a good, legit frame pack, because I don't have one. I haven't had a need for one to this point. The last Western hunt that I did, it wasn't really necessary. I had a pack that I could pack some meat out with, but I didn't have, it wasn't like a full on, hike in and kind of spike camp style, hunting scenario that this trip will be. So I need to get, set up with that. And so I've been kind of investigating that and learning a lot about the different gear options when it comes to frame packs and backcountry tents and things of that nature. So really kind of starting to get jazzed up for this upcoming season. It kind of hit me this past week as I was starting to really look at gear and, having to pick up the last few things I need to get for Idaho, and realizing that I'm like, a little over 2 months out before I, hop in a plane and take off, and my hunting season at least will kick off around the 29th, 30th of August. So super pumped for that. But with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. Actually, one thing to mention really quick, if you're looking for tethered one sticks, I believe they just got more tethered one sticks in, if you are interested in picking those up, if you've been waiting. I know they've been out of stock for a little bit. I believe they just got a batch in. Their gear goes crazy quick. So if it's something that you want to pick up, I would suggest you hop on their website now at tetherednation.com and pick up those tethered one sticks. I believe it's going to be available just, while supplies last at this point. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Have Jacob Emery on. Jacob actually is a friend of our buddy Josh Profit that we had on just a couple weeks ago. It was funny because the way I found out about Jacob was I was on Josh's Instagram profile. His name popped up somewhere, looked interesting. I checked it out. He has a YouTube channel. I ended up watching some of his YouTube videos, and they were really good. And I just really like the way the dude hunts. Like, he's just a real honest, passionate whitetail hunter. And in the world of doing it for the gram, so to speak, his approach and his kind of thought process and how he kind of goes about hunting was just refreshing, and I wanted to have a conversation with him. He's killed a bunch of good deer, but he's killed 2 recently that kind of broke a 3-year drought that he had, that were just hammer bucks. One was Indiana, and then one was Kentucky. He's from Kentucky. And both of them were very similar in terms of like where the type of setup that he killed them in, and using water access. And, the one thing in the video that I noticed was like we talked about it a little bit, was just the one area was just really, really hard to get into. And that, we all talk about wanting to find those little hard to reach spots, but a lot of times, when you find them, a lot of folks aren't necessarily willing to do the work to get into them. And then beyond that, some people are even turned away when they find a spot like that, and it's like, oh, this looks like a gold mine. But then they start thinking about the work to get something out. And the work he had to put in to kind of get the one deer out of the one spot was pretty ridiculous, in terms of, docking the boat a couple times, having to drag the deer, put the deer back in the boat, get over a log jam, like all kinds of stuff, that just made for a really kind of cool hunt. And how he killed the deer, and just like, the ability to break that 3-year drought that he was on, was just a really cool story. So really enjoyed the conversation with Jacob. Hope you guys dig it as much as I did. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. It seems like I'm having a run on Kentucky boys here. I just had my buddy Josh Profit on, and I got another bluegrass fella on the line, Mr. Jacob Emery. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man?
Good to meet you, man. I was doing a little Instagram stalking and just kind of I think you're friends either at least in the Instagram world with Josh Profit. Do you know him personally? Or you guys just kind of online buddies?
Okay, so me and Josh, we go way back.
Are you serious?
Our mothers used to be good friends, and I mean, for years, there'd be times I wouldn't go over a week without seeing Josh. Josh actually took me turkey hunting on my very last season as a youth, and we killed a bird right at last light. It was pretty cool. But no, I've known Josh my whole life, and I think a lot of him, and he's a killer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I just I've known Josh for not as long as you have, just a couple years, and had him on. I guess at this point it's probably like 2 weeks ago. Well, 2 weeks as we're recording this when the podcast comes out. And I don't. I think I was looking on like his Instagram page for photos or something for the post of like of his upcoming podcast. And I stumbled across your name and I was like, oh, YouTube channel. Let me check this out. And so I clicked on it and looked at it, and I was following like along with some of the hunts that you had posted. And I was like, man, I need to talk to this guy. And and that's literally kind of how it kind of came about. So it's 2 degrees of separate. We could just kind of refer to Josh. He's kind of like Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation from Josh. How's that?
Yeah, I like it.
I don't think. I mean, he would be the furthest thing from Kevin Bacon, but we'll go ahead and stick with that, man. But before we jump into hunting stuff, dude, I always just kind of like to break the ice and just get a sense of where people are and what they do in this wild and crazy world. So if you wouldn't mind, man, give a little bit of background about yourself. Where you're from, what you do for a living.
Well, I am from Calhoun, Kentucky. I think I got introduced to hunting through TV. Actually, none of my family was really big into it. I had my granddad, was a meat hunter, and back in the '60s, '70s, Iraq was the last thing they were concerned with.
Right.
So actually watching stuff on TV. I think my dad, he works on the boat and he's gone 30 days, home 30 days. And he always used to pass the time by watching movies. And he actually had some monster buck videos and some primos videos. And I think I got to watching those one night, and it took to me. And I let my granddad know, like, hey, this is something I really want to get into. And uh, so I've been doing it since I was about 9 or 10, and just enjoying it and hunting close to home up till about the last 10 years, and that's when I started, branching out and uh, doing a little bit more. But besides that, I'm 31 years old, big family guy. I've got a wife, 3 kids, and I'm an electrician. I'm currently a maintenance electrician at a aluminum smelter, and before that, I was an IBW electrician. Kind of bouncing around all over the place, but
Nice.
just an average blue collar dude that just loves to be outdoors and consumed with it 365.
Right, man. My favorite kind of people to talk to, dude. That was the one thing that kind of struck me watching some of your videos is just how kind of forthright and like no frills, just like we're going to get after it and go hunt deer. And it's nice, and we'll talk about the videos here in a little bit, but it's nice and refreshing to kind of see that that approach. There wasn't a NASCAR feel to it.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, man, I couldn't have killed him without this, or this.
I know, right? I know. It's a little maddening, but I thought you did a good job of just kind of painting the story, the picture, and the emotion and stuff like it. But we'll get to that in a second. How was this past season? Which we'll talk about the videos, but how did your season play out this year? You have a good year?
Um, I would say it's probably my best year that I've ever had. And I don't see myself beating it maybe ever.
Hmm.
Because I'm not one of those guys that's going to chase a 200 if I've got a couple, 140s and 150s that are showing up all the time. I'm going to take the low hanging fruit every single time.
Yeah.
That's just me. But no, it was a really, really good, productive year. And I feel like my scouting and hard work and all the sweat in the summertime paid off later on in the year. And patience was a big thing with killing both of these deer that I killed last year. It was actually a 3-year drought that I ended, or what would have been a 3-year drought in my home state of Kentucky, had I not killed the buck that I did. And so 2020, I didn't kill a deer at all. 2019 was pretty good. Date back to 2018. It seems like every 3 years I have a really good year. Like 2015, I killed a really nice buck. In 18, I killed a buck in Kentucky and Tennessee. The Tennessee buck was public, and now 2021, I killed two really nice deer in my eyes. Anyway, some people
Yeah.
wouldn't even pick their bow up to the deer I shot, but no,
I,
every 3 years it seems like I got a pretty good year.
Yeah, I would have slung arrows and muzzleloader shot at both of those. So you're gonna get no qualms from me. And so as I was watching some of your videos and stuff, I saw you mention like the 3-year drought, and I can kind of relate because I think I'm on year number 3 myself. Of having some great encounters, you know, drawn back on deer, you know what I mean, and just couldn't get like the last step or whatever the case was that I needed. In your case, like, what do you think there's anything different that you've done from 3 years ago to now that was the result, or in part the result of the success you had this past year?
Man, honest to God, just any time that I have free time away from the kids and the wife, I dedicate to either putting my eyes on a screen or putting my feet on the ground. And there's no better tool. You can go out and you can buy, a $750 deer stand. You can buy some super expensive clothing, but nothing beats knowing your, property that you're hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, between the 3 or 4 different states that I hunt, you know, pretty regularly, it's almost gotten to a point to where I'm starting to branch out now and just check other places I've never been before because I know the other places so well.
Right.
But just knowing your place, knowing your deer, because every single place is different, and different places or different deer in different areas, especially in the country, react differently to pressure and people.
Mm.
And you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would just say time in the field and running cameras for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about camera. It's interesting when you talked about branching out, because that's one thing for me, over time, that was, I think, probably critical in like my evolution, I guess you could say, right? And
Right.
and I've talked to some buddies about this in the past, and actually did a podcast about it. And it was one of those things where when I started kind of branching out and traveling a lot more and hunting like areas that were just completely different than my home state of Pennsylvania, like, just, you couldn't be more different. That was when I started kind of seeing, um, I started almost creating like a Rolodex of like experiences, to where even though I might be in a different state, it's like I've seen a setup like this where there was a little draw here, and the draw might not be as deep in this where I'm currently hunting, but there was a little depression that I was hunting that reminded me of a draw that I hunted in Missouri somewhere, and that the wind did this coming off that draw, and so I think I need to hunt it this way because I think the deer are going to come from here. And I started just being able to take like almost like mental pictures of places, and I would go somewhere and I would have deja vu, like I'd been there before, and it was a completely different state, but I immediately kind of know how to hunt it. Do you get similar kind of senses, like after you've been to a bunch of different states and you've hunted a bunch of different land and scouted, especially scouting, a bunch of different land? Do you get that like almost sixth sense when you walk into places that it feels eerie, like you've almost been there before, but you never have?
Yeah, I feel like I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, for sure, absolutely. I mean, I was almost thinking of a spot when you were talking about that. uh, in 3 different states, I've got a spot you were talking about. It's
Hmm.
kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, it all goes back to like the idea that there's no magic bullet for this stuff. It's the only way to get better at it is you just have to continue to do it and scout and spend time in the woods. And it sounds like that's what you were doing, and it paid dividends this past year, it sounds like.
Right, and something I actually talked on the phone with Josh the other day is a man can spend every day in the summertime leading up to September, October. He can hunt every single day off work he has. He can not even have a job and hunt every single day. It doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work or how much you scout. Sometimes it's just not in your cards that year,
Hmm.
and that's the bottom line. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And then sometimes you've got a guy that'll just say, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go up the road and hunt this piece of public I've never hunted." And they kill the biggest deer in the woods,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is slightly aggravating, but
Yeah.
props to them.
Yeah. No, I had that year last year of, like, it was probably the best year I've ever had without releasing an arrow. Like
Yes,
I just
I know
had,
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, I just had encounter after encounter with bucks that I had known of and that I was targeting. Two of them in PA particularly. That just Pennsylvania's a hard state in public to hunt, just a ton of pressure. And I had encounters with 2 deer. They were really the only 2 deer I was willing to shoot in my area. Actually, no, there was a third one. I just couldn't catch up to him. But 2 of the 3 I ended up having encounters with at 15 yards and 18 yards. And just,
Oh God.
yeah, it just couldn't. One was a really bad rookie mistake I made. And the other one, I just didn't get an opportunity. He was behind some brush at a scrape. And then people are probably, I'm sure, listening to this, tired of hearing me tell this story, but I had one in Kansas on the ground at like 15 yards that was a hammer and just wasn't in the cards. You know, it was just I was at the right spot and he was not going to commit any further than he came, and he needed about 2 more steps to clear this last down tree that was there. And I was at full draw on him, ready to let him eat some carbon. And again, it just wasn't in the card. So it was one of the most frustrating years I've ever had. It was probably one of the best years I've ever had in terms of encounters, but also one of the worst because I came home with all my tags from last year.
I'm telling you, man, if everybody in the world got those 2 more steps, everybody's walls would be full.
Oh man, you ain't kidding, dude. How many times? And it's just like, it's almost like they have a sixth sense. You know what I mean? Like
What they do. There is something that they have that we don't, and we'll never understand it. And there's no way to run test on it. But it's like, if somebody walks in your house and is hiding behind your curtains, like, hey, most of the time you're gonna pick that up. Like you're going in their house, they know if something's changed.
mm-hmm.
It's just amazing, man. And I used to get so pissed off
Mm-hmm.
that it wouldn't work out. But it's almost like nowadays I walk out of the woods with my butt handed to me with more of an appreciation for them because they are so good at surviving.
Yeah. I'm glad you said good at surviving because I was literally just talking to my buddy Tony about, the idea of deer being smart. And actually Josh and I were talking about it too, if I'm not mistaken. It was just kind of weird because I did a podcast with Josh and I was talking to my buddy Tony and he actually brought it up as well. And I was like, oh, this is weird. I was just literally talking to my buddy Josh about this. And he was asking me, he does a bunch of stuff for Meat Eater, and he was asking me for just like some quotes around like whether I think deer are smart or not, and just examples where I had a instance of like a kill and a not kill where I would kind of either say yes or no that deer are smart or they aren't. And what I kind of came to is that they don't have the ability to rationalize or reason or things like that. So they're not smart. I was like, I think people mistake their intelligence, or they misinterpret their intelligence. And what it really is just a very acute awareness and observation to everything that's around them. Like they are so tuned in to their environment that it seems like a sixth sense, but they're really just picking up on something that we just completely overlook all the time. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you kind of phrased it that way, because that's kind of that's what and so I guess another way of saying is like, even like the smallest movements and stuff that we make that we don't think are a big deal, like that, those are big deal. That's a big deal to a deer. Like they can see that, they'll recognize that, or ground scent that's left, or if you trim a branch or whatever that we don't really think much about, or you break a branch when you're walking in, you don't think much about, but that to a deer, that's like walking into their bedroom and like moving their bed out of the room. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, that's how abrupt it is to them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. I was actually thinking about that today when I hung a camera and I got to breaking sticks and this and that and everything else. I'm like, I'm glad it's like early June because you won't get away with this crap in October.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, man, I'm a set it and forget it guy, like with cameras and prepping and stuff like that. Like the older I get, the less and less time I spend in the woods, like throughout the summer, for a bunch of reasons. But one, I try to get all my work done early, but and I don't like to be out when it's hot if I can avoid it. And two, I just try to let them have the woods for as long as I possibly can until I'm ready to go kill them. That's it.
For sure.
So I'm curious, man, how you feeling for this upcoming season? You feel like you're prepped, you ready to go? You have your plans all kind of ironed out?
Yeah. So I was kind of sitting back and I've waited too long because I've always wanted to hunt Kansas. I've got a point, and I missed the draw. I should have went ahead and put in for it and not worried about going elk hunting. Um, and some things actually come up, at home to where like I really did not need to get drawn for this elk hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did not want to go this year. I just wanted my point, but I'd already put in.
Mm-hmm.
There's no turning back. And man, I was checking it every like 10 minutes for 2 days on Colorado's website. And I finally figured out I was not going elk hunting. So
Okay.
kind
So
of that was a good thing.
right.
So it looks like this year it's just going to be back to the basics of Kentucky, Indiana, and I'll hunt some Tennessee as well.
Nice. So are you feeling prepped? You got all like your prep work done, everything ready to
Mm,
roll, scouting finished up, all that stuff?
No, I'd say I'm probably at about 20% of getting my cameras out. Um, so I like to place a bunch of non-sales. I run the Tascos from Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Honest to God, like 99% of my non-sailor cameras are Tascos. And I will set them about this time every year. In some places I've never been before, and some places where, I've set cameras in the past and had great success. Just kind of take inventory, and I'll let them soak for a month and a half, 2 months. Go back in, pull the ones that aren't producing, and I'll have cell cameras with me in case one is producing and
Mm-hmm.
showing an early season deer. Of course, because season comes in down here like September 3rd this year.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because you have a velvet opportunity in Kentucky, right?
oh yes, I live for early season. I mean, I would. This people want to crucify me over this, but I would almost. I think actually I would if I could hunt 1 week out of the year. I would rather hunt the first week of September than hunt middle November. That's
Really?
just me.
Wh-
Absolutely,
Why is
I
that?
love deer in velvet. If you can find the right one in the right spot that's doing stupid stuff while he's still got the fuzz, they're easier to kill.
Hmm.
Um, that's just my opinion. Now, granted, I've only killed two velvet deer in my life, so they're a little bit harder to kill than you think. But it seems like every single year, like a day before season, man, the one I want to go kill just up and vanishes or something
Hmm.
happens and it just don't work out. But I like the early season patterns. Just something about summertime scouting and stuff. I don't know. I've always taken to it. My best deer actually is a velvet buck that I killed in 2011, and I've yet to top him.
Hmm.
but no, my goal this year is actually to kill a buck in Kentucky in velvet. And after that, it's a free for all. But right now, I'm just trying to find one to hunt. I don't have one in mind. I don't have a deer from last year that I'm trying to target, and pretty much hunting all the same places that I always have. Just uh, trying a few different locations for cameras and setups. And um, when it gets closer to time, the best scouting tool you can have is your binoculars and your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, as far as early season,
What's the pressure like for early season in Kentucky? Is it?
oh, it's insane.
Oh,
I
is
mean,
it?
this like think about all the places you can go in the U.S. and
Hmm.
kill an early season velvet buck.
Right.
There's like two or three places, maybe,
Yeah.
if you're lucky. That's it.
Hmm.
And everybody likes Kentucky because you buy that license. You don't kill one in September. I'll just come back for my rutcation.
Yeah.
So the woods are completely full. It's ridiculous. The first week and a half, everybody disappears until about the first week of November, and then everybody comes back.
Hmm. And just crazy hot too, I'm sure.
Oh, it's
Steamy.
it's miserable. Yeah, miserable.
That's the one thing that would keep me from like my season opens middle of September here because I'm in a special regulations unit, so it comes in like I don't know. I think last year it was the 19th, maybe one year it was like the 15th. Just depends on how that like Saturday falls or whatever. Um, and it's just I mean nowhere near as hot as Kentucky, but I like that time of year because it keeps a lot of fair weather bow hunters out of the woods, and so a lot of times if I have something that's patterned or that I know he's bedding and eating somewhere still, I at least have a play before maybe he completely vanishes for the fall. And I don't have to deal with quite as many people. But man, I can't express how much I dislike hunting in the heat. I do it because I know I have an advantage of like there's being less people, but I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. That's just the big thing for me. I say the woods is flooded. Um, if you do a little bit of work, I mean, you can find somewhere where You've got a secluded field that they're hitting maybe, and everybody else is going to sit on the field edge. And I've been watching the deer for 2 or 3 weeks, coming to that spot every night, and I'm going to be 50 to 150 yards tucked back in the woods waiting on them to get there.
Right.
But no, I like early season, but I just like killing deer. Period. So I don't care when I kill them, just as long as they die.
Right. Nice. Yeah, there's one I've always kind of kicked around the idea of going to Delaware would be the closest to me to hunt velvet because it comes in early September or the beginning of September. I don't remember exactly what the date is. And I always kind of kick around, and maybe this year will be the year because similar to you, I mean, I drew an elk tag, so I won't be back here until like September 3rd or 4th. I actually drew the elk tag, or I was trying to buy an over the counter lottery Idaho tag. I ended up getting it, and so
Nice.
yeah, so I'm doing that. I have a buddy that lives out there, so I'm gonna go out there for their opener and hunt for a week there, and then I'll be back. I think around like the 4th or something like that. And then I was thinking of maybe making a run to Delaware and trying to do like a velvet hunt if I could, but that would only be if I don't get my Kansas tag because I did try to. I don't have a point this year. And I know it's harder to. It used to be pretty regular that you could get a Kansas tag with no points, but now it's. I won't say it's impossible, but it's a good bit harder. So I don't know if I'm going to get. I don't know if I'm going to get that tag or not, and so I'm not sure exactly what my plans are going to be until that. I think that comes out in like the next like couple weeks. They should send out the emails letting us know what's happening. So if that doesn't happen, then maybe I will make a run to Delaware because then I really don't have any out of state plans then for this year.
I gotcha. While we're talking, I'm actually going to look something up. I'm going to tell you what your odds are of drawing or what the worst odds are of drawing a Kansas tag with no points. I'm pretty sure I looked the other day; it was only like 50%. So I think you've got at least a 50% chance
Right,
to
because
draw a
it
tag out
used to
there.
be almost like 85%, if I'm not mistaken. Like several years ago when I was looking, because I started looking, I was like, well, man, I was like, I could go to Kansas probably almost every year if I wanted to, and like maybe every 3 years I wouldn't draw or something like that. But I mean, I heard of
Thanks a lot.
people. What's that?
Thanks a lot, hunting public.
I know, right? I
I'm
know.
just kidding.
I know some buddies of mine, some guys I know last year had a point and still didn't draw last year,
Really?
which was crazy because it's almost like guaranteed if you have a point.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll see. It's one of those things. I was chatting with a buddy, and we were just kind of talking about changing plans based on like gas prices and stuff like that. And I was just like, if I'm being honest, I was like, if I didn't draw the Kansas tag this year, I was like, I wouldn't be as disappointed as I would be most years. Put it that way.
Yeah. Me and my buddy actually drew a Wyoming General turkey tag, and we thought about not going. And I wish I had it because this was the worst turkey season I've had in 22 years. It was awful. $1,000 plus in fuel to drive out there and back, and neither one of us brought home a bird, which is crazy because both of us had a South Dakota and a Wyoming tag. And you watch people go out there and beat on a pan with a stick, and they come walking in, and we're two seasoned turkey hunters, and we didn't even get close.
Oh man, dude,
We didn't
that's a
get close.
bummer, dude.
I missed 4 times this spring. It was awful.
Oh geez. Yeah,
It was bad.
that's rough. That's rough. So man, I know you like to hunt public land. People have all kinds of different reasons for why they like to hunt public land or why they hunt it or how they hunt it or whatever the case is. What ultimately attracted you to hunting public land? Some people just like the challenge of knowing that everyone else is there and it presents a challenge. Some people, do it out of necessity, because they don't have anywhere else to go and aren't interested in trying to get knock on door permission or anything like that. What's kind of your rationale? Like, why do you like hunting public?
I do it for the gram. I mean, it's the cool thing to do. I am joking. So when I started getting serious about killing bigger deer was around 2010. Before that, it was just hunting with a bow and hoping something come walking by wherever I might be. And then the first rack buck that swung by in gun season, he got it.
Right.
The reason those days are over is because it seemed like the 4 or 5 little places, tracks, properties that I had, whatever you want to call them, every one of them was under like 20 acres.
Mm-hmm.
You can't You can if it's the right 20 acres. Um, but it's hard to hunt a specific deer or catch a good deer coming through some of them spots. And they slowly all just started diminishing left and right, getting sold, getting logged, clear cut. Just one day, yeah, I love this. Well, I'd like to let you hunt again, but my twice removed cousin's grandmother,
Yeah.
she's going to come hunt one time during gun season, and I can't let you. And I just got sick of it, dude. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, screw it. I'm over it, and I'm tired of the heartbreak, and I'm going somewhere where um, I know I'll have. And honest to God, I got room to roam.
Hmm.
So I don't hunt it because it's the hip new cool thing to do. But I do it because it's something I'm always going to have, and I'm going to have it in multiple states every single place I go.
That was the
And
big.
it is fun. It's an adventure everywhere you
Hmm.
go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That was for me the reason. Well, I kind of just started focusing solely on that however many years ago was, we have family property back home, but it's a good solid 3.5 hour drive for me to get back there, and the hunting property isn't great. And what really kind of was the nail in the coffin for me was there was a good deer that I knew of that was on my in-laws farm, and I was hunting that deer, and I had him pegged and I knew where he was bedded, but it was on the neighbor's property, and I couldn't hunt it, couldn't get permission to hunt it, so I had to constantly wait for that deer to eventually make his way over to me. And it was frustrating because I had 4 different encounters with that deer, and couldn't get him killed, and it was just one of those things where I was like, if I could just move 150 yards closer, because I knew roughly where he was at, but it was just taking him too long to get to me. I was like, if I could just make that move, it's like I feel like it would be a slam dunk. Now, may or may not have killed that deer, but the idea being that I know where he's at, and I could get closer and give myself a better chance of seeing him at the right time, like with enough daylight, and I can't do it. And so once I had that experience with that deer, I was like, you know what, I'm done with that. I need to hunt places where I can just go actually hunt and not wait. Because I was like, it's killing me just sitting around waiting for this deer to show up. And that was ultimately why I kind of, whatever year that was, made the transition. And then it was also the other thing that you mentioned, which was going out of state. It was one of those things where, I want to go out of state. I'm not going to, get a lease. I'm not going to go to an outfitter. I'm not going to, pay extra money to go do something. I can just get a tag and go hunt free land. And so makes sense to just sharpen those skills at home and do the same thing at home, because I've got some public that's not too far away. So just like you, man, I do it for the gram.
Heck yeah, bud. Heck yeah.
No,
No, it's a great resource, and I hope it never goes away. And who knows?
yeah, and there's a lot better hunting there than people would think, even with the pressure and stuff like that. And I do like the challenge. I like the idea of having to find like the honey hole within the honey hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's as good as you make it.
Hmm.
Home is where you make it. Whatever. uh, you, you've got these guys that want to give it a shot, and they're going to pull up, the first, gravel pull off. They'll maybe walk down the gravel road, and they'll walk to a destination that they've spotted on the map. It's 50 yards off the main trail. I'm just going to hunt this saddle, and they climb up. Something bad happens after that. They don't see a deer. They do it 2 or 3 times. They're like, man, hunting public sucks. You just got to change your game up just a little bit. And honest to God, man, I've started hunting the people, not
Yeah,
hunting the people, but watching the people, watching the access more than the deer,
yeah.
because that's going to tell you a lot of where your deer are going to be.
Hmm.
And this is crazy. I hung a camera today, and I'll never tell even my buddies where it's at, but it's an access camera, and it is watching basically a parking lot. So I know, I mean, it's like 15 feet up in a tree.
Hmm.
Uh, I will know when people are in there fooling around,
Yep.
and I'll know how much pressure it gets.
Yeah.
And it's just something I wanted to try this year on a couple different spots or
It's
parking lot.
it's funny that you say that, because I'll do that too. I won't hang it on like at the parking lot necessarily. I'll hang it more so back where the like in and around the area where the access might be off, like off of a primary trail, like hiking trail or something like that I know people are going to use, and I'm going back to a certain spot, and I might hang one off that trail to where I can see it, so I can see how many people are actually getting that far back or to that particular spot. You know what I mean? that'll give me an idea of how many people are actually going to be in the general area that I want to be in. But I do the same thing. I always say, especially around PA, just with the hunter numbers that we have, I always say if you are deterred by bright eyes and flagging tape, you'll never find a spot to hunt around here because it's all over the place. You know what I mean? Like and you have to look at it and see how old it is. Like if it's flagging tape, it's all like sun bleached out and stuff like that. Well, probably not super active. You know what I mean? But I do the same thing. It's like if I don't hang bright eyes very often, I just use a map, an app and a tracking tool and find my way, and if it's challenging access, that is one thing I will do in the summers. I will walk in and I will walk the access 2 or 3 times, like early in the morning or late in the evening. So I'm doing it in the dark. So I know how to get in and out, especially for early season when there's still going to be a bunch of stuff on the trees and a bunch of stuff on the brush and stuff.
Yep.
Just so I know what I'm doing and I'm not making a ton of extra noise and stuff like that. But when I do have access like that might be hard, I will hang a few bright eyes. But what I do, this is like, I said this, I think, on a different podcast, but what I'll do is I'll actually take the bright eyes and I'll make a salt water solution, lay them in that, then lay them outside to let them air dry and let them rust so they look like they've been there for a while, and they'll use those. That way it doesn't look like a brand new one.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So little ninja Jedi trick, trying to make sure people think that that's just like an old bright eye that nobody's using anymore. So,
well, if I come to PA and I start seeing a bunch of rusted ones, I'm gonna start following them.
Right. So I'll have to switch up my game, put all new ones out, throw people off my trail.
That's all right.
Right. So, man, you're hunting public, you're hunting a bunch of different states and stuff like that. How would you describe your hunting style? Like, are you aggressive? Are you more observational, laid back? I think I probably know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from you. Describe your hunting style for me?
Man, it's all situational. So if I've got just a 5-day tag, I've got a state that I'm only going to be in for 5, 6, 7 days or whatever, I'm going to be super aggressive, and I'm not going to worry too much about bumping this, bumping that. I'm just going to hunt hard, and I'm going to keep moving until I find what I want to hunt or what I want to kill. Now, granted, like maybe back here in Kentucky, I'm not going to push the deer super hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've got all year to kill them.
Right.
It's all situational, depending on where I'm at and how much time I have, and really the amount of pressure too. Like, man, if there's a bunch of people hunting a certain spot, and say you're only drawn for that one area, just talking out my butt.
Right.
I mean, you might as what is it? What does my buddy say? I'm gonna try not to use curse words.
You're not gonna offend me, man. You're good.
Oh no. If you're if you're gonna go to a shit show, you might as well be the ringleader.
Right.
So
yep.
But no, like back home, it's always different. I'm always way more laid back here, unless I see an opportunity to capitalize on quick. And we'll get into the Indiana buck story, but that actually was just pure patience, was killing that deer and not touching that place until the time was right. So, like I said, very situational. Depends on the time of year and where I'm at and how much time I have to hunt.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. I think for me, I would probably teeter more on aggressive than passive, but I agree. Situation, I could probably stand to be a little bit more aggressive at home. Sometimes I think I lay back too much here, and I think it's cost me a few times. Just by not, I don't want to say pounding down the pavement, but similar to you, it's like, and actually this is something I picked up from Josh, and I mentioned it to him when he and I were talking. It's just like that idea, it was something he said, if you're not kicking up deer, then you're not trying hard enough, especially if you're somewhere where you're unfamiliar, or maybe you can't find your target buck and he's not showing up and you're not sure where he's at. Like, I kind of take that to heart, to where it's like, I'm not afraid to move some deer to find where the deer are at, and sometimes, especially when I'm out of state, when I'm at home, sometimes I don't do that. And I let a deer get the best of me because I didn't just go out and hunt him. Like, I start to get a little bit too passive and try to wait for all the puzzle pieces I've learned in the off season. Like, I can see the picture and I'm just waiting for him to show up. And when I think probably a lot of times I probably just need to go press the issue a little bit and probably have different results. But 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I agree with your buddy though. I'd prefer to be the shit show ringleader.
That's right.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So how big, man, I know you like to hunt mobile. How much of an impact do you think kind of getting more mobile over the years has had on your on your quality of encounters, quality of hunts, all those types of things?
It's night and day.
Yeah.
Dating back, I told you I killed my best deer in 2011. Um, I hung that stand the day before and killed him the next day.
Hmm.
And that, I guess that was my first, like, it wasn't really a hang and hunt, but I did go in there the last minute to hang it, and I hunted him the next day. But ever since then, I've dabbled in the climbers,
Hmm.
and I hunted with a climber up till 2018. And whenever, well, yeah, 2018, 2019 is the first time I got introduced to a saddle. And I don't talk about it a lot because everybody
Hmm.
everybody wants to talk about it and tell you that they hunt out of a saddle. I don't. I like to use tools that help me, but I try not to, like, just throw it out there. Just, I don't know, to avoid that. Oh, you're just doing this because it's cool or whatever.
Right.
No, once I got in the saddle world, man, it's just really hard to hunt with anything else. Now, granted, I do use a light hang on every now and then. I killed my Kentucky buck out of a light hang on, and I think there's a time for both.
Hmm.
But I would say now, I mean, I'm hunting out of a saddle 85% of the time, if not some a little bit more.
Right.
And that was a saddle and a set of sticks. And I've gotten to where I've sold my sticks, and I've got nothing but one stick, and that's the way I'm going to climb a tree every single time now.
Yeah. I started. I don't even remember when I met some of the guys from Tethered like when they first launched. I think I actually have some like their prototype like platforms, like original stuff before they started selling it. They shared it with me to just let me check it out, and I was skeptical, at first. And then once I kind of tried it, like a lot of other people, I was like, oh man, like this is great. It's lighter. All the reasons that people have talked about for forever why they prefer it. And I agree. It's a tool. People can still kill deer in a multitude of ways. I think my biggest thing has always been trying to be as multiple as possible. I want to be able to hunt whatever the situation is. And it's one of the reasons why I like going out of state, because I like to kind of hunt different topography, different terrain, and stuff like that. And this year for me, it was going to Kansas and hunting like 95% from the ground in a ghillie jacket. Like that was most of all the hunts I did because I was in an area that didn't have a lot of trees. Went further west, so it was way more plainsy. Like the draws were a lot smaller, and there was a lot of glass and finding deer and spotting and stalking, and that's really kind of the type of hunt I wanted to have. And I just like to be able to try to, be effective no matter what the situation calls for. And it kind of sounds like you're similar in that whatever you need to do, you want to be able to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
My truck will stay full with every tool that I can possibly stuff in the bed from September till January.
Right. Nice.
I've got a set of waders in there. I've got a set of tip waders. Uh, if I'm going somewhere where I'm going to use my kayak's in there. Rubber boots. Got my Kinetrex. I mean, anything. I've got an e-bike right now. It's being worked on. I love that thing. Um, but man, if I can use it, I'm going to have it with me.
Yeah. I'm similar in that to where it's to your point, waders, different boots stay in the truck all season long. They're in the bed, covered up. That way, wherever I get to, I've got what I need. Kayak, man, that was something I added to my arsenal a couple years ago. How and how valuable are those, dude?
I, um, I just love it. I've fallen in love with water access
Yeah.
over the last 3 years, and I was almost to the point of, like, dedication to where I was going to kill a deer in this area in Indiana that I bought this kayak for, or I wasn't going to kill one nowhere else. I wasn't going to hunt nowhere else. Damn it! I spent the money to buy the kayak, and I've tried it for 2 years. I'm going to kill one in here in this kayak. I don't care if he's a 90-inch deer before the end of this year. I will kill a deer and I will paddle him out
Right.
here, and I'm going to do it here, nowhere else. So, but no, man, I love it. That you just cannot beat not disturbing the ground
Yeah.
A lot of times you're out of sight, you're out of mind. In um, Creek wise, sometimes on the lake, a deer could be watching you paddle in for half a mile, whatever. But um, I love everything about it. As far as being quiet, being stealthy, being quick, and the ground scent thing is huge. Um, it's it's my favorite way to hunt
Yeah.
out of a kayak.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's once I started using it, I just started looking for places that had water access available to it, whether it was in state or out of state, just because one, you get rid of a lot of people that way, which is nice. The stealth is, it's, I mean, slipping into places where they got no clue you're there. It's just, I hate using the word game changer because it's thrown around too loosely, but that it truly is a game changer when you can show up and nothing knows that you were ever there. I've got a couple spots where I can kind of slip in, crawl up the bank, and I'm maybe up off the bank 10 yards and I'm in a tree. And if I don't see anything and I slip out, it's a couple spots that I have that I could hunt. I could literally hunt that if I had the right wind every day, and nothing would ever know that I was there. I mean,
Right,
they would have to be so close to the water's edge, to catch my ground scent there that there's, I won't say a 0% chance, but very little chance they would ever know that I was there. And I love those types of places, especially on public where you're, battling pressure and stuff like that. If you can find a little spot to where you don't booger up and you can let everyone else booger everything up around you, it's the spot within the spot. You're doing what you were talking about earlier. You're hunting people at that point,
yep,
you know,
absolutely,
you know.
absolutely.
So, man, what type of, between the different states you're hunting, I know Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky primarily, right? Is what you said you hunt, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. What can you describe a little bit about the topography and the terrain of the typical places that you would hunt? I mean, are they all somewhat similar? Are they all drastically different? Can you just kind of, like walk me through what that looks like?
it's funny you say that because they're all so different. Um, some of the places that I hunt in Tennessee are, if you've got a 10-foot rise in elevation, it's a miracle.
Right.
Places what the around here close to where I hunt in Indiana, Kentucky, you've got mixed ag with bottoms in the bottoms, and um, nothing like what you guys got up there. I've hunted Maryland before. There's some mountains up that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we really have what you consider mountains down here. Just big rolling hills, occasionally a couple steep bluffs. But for the most part, everything around here is what I would consider flatter.
Mm-hmm.
Very petite terrain features um, deter or attract these deer. And sometimes you can't just pull up a topo map and key in on them. Like you got to find them in person. That's how minute they are. Um, I don't know. They're all so different, and there's different ways to hunt every one of them. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that flat because there's some areas that I hunt, so I'll go up into northern PA, up and around like the Pocono Mountains, and those are some mountains, and I do some hunting up there, um, and that's gnarly. And there's some places in Ohio that I hunt that have some pretty gnarly topography and stuff. But where I live, particularly, is a lot of kind of swampy, low lying area, and so I can relate with the idea that you know, there's a lot of the terrain features and stuff that I might hunt or hang a camera in or something like that. It was something that I found by scouting and walking and putting boots on the ground because you would never see it on a topo map ever. It
Right.
doesn't, I got when I was in the spot, I'm on the map looking and it's not there, you know.
Exactly. And Onyx is, um, I wouldn't say they're terrible about it, but that's the only app that I use, so I don't really know. But like you said, you'll be in there looking at like this awesome little like funnel, and it and it's like super steep around it and whatnot. And it doesn't even show up. There's a topo line there. It's like, see, that's one of the things you like you said you got to find in person.
Yeah, yeah. Which is, I mean, it's good and it's bad. It sucks because it makes it hard to find them, right? And you just got to put boots on the ground. But when you do find them, you can pretty much rest assured most everyone else is going to overlook it too, you know? And so I've often found those have almost become like the little spots within the spot where it's like, any of the larger terrain features that people can see, especially in those flat areas where they're few and far between, man, people are just going to flock to those like moths to a flame. And then you find those little subtle kind of terrain features and changes and slight changes in elevation, just like a small little ditch that doesn't show up on the map or something like that. I mean, those are huge. You know what I mean? Like that's like those are huge terrain features or landmarks for deer to use, whether it's a ditch crossing or if it's a seep that's holding a little bit of water or whatever the case is. Like those can be absolute gold mines.
Yep.
But so with that, with this kind, with everything kind of being different, like is your trail camera strategy kind of the same across all these things, or is it slightly different in all those places?
Man, my trail cam strategy changes like from seasonal, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of my sets right now, with the occasional community scrape, I mean, everything I'm setting right now is based off of food, ag,
Mm-hmm.
and from where they're going to be bedding to the food,
Mm-hmm.
um, versus like huge terrain features and this and that they'd use later on. Deer around here, this is where it gets real tricky. Is everybody imagines like this little point off a hill. It's flat. That's where the buck's going to be bedding with the wind, over his back. He's going to be watching the bottom. These deer around here in ag will bed in the middle of agricultural, whether it's corn, beans, milo. When they gets tall enough, they'll bed out in the middle of it, and there really ain't no way to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that you can sneak out there and try to. I mean, you're going to be shooting. All you can see is the top of their head half the time.
Right.
So it gets kind of tough to hunt. So going back to hunting them early deer, finding that one deer that is using like a path or whatever it takes to get to the beans or the milo or the sunflowers, that's the one that I want to hunt. And between 40 different cameras that I'll have set out, by late July, I'm hoping to have at least 2 deer that are acting silly in a
Mm.
silly spot.
Right.
Uh,
Now, do you running that many cameras? Do you often hunt off of MRI, most recent intelligence? Like, so you pull a camera card or you have a cell camera and you're getting some intel, and you're like, all right, I'm getting this weather front that's coming. I think that deer's killable now. I just need this wind, and I'm going to go try to kill him. Or do you take a longer kind of view approach of like learning a piece of public or a part of a piece of public and hanging cameras, soaking them for a year, and then really kind of understanding how deer are using that piece, particularly over the course of a season, and what deer may be in those areas during different times of the year? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, it's definitely the most recent information
Okay.
because deer patterns down here in ag country change year to year based off what
Mm.
ag is, planted.
Yeah, that's a good
Deer,
point, man. I didn't think of that, the ag rotation aspect of it.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
today I was actually in a WMA office begging the guy for a layout of all the fields, like what are they planted in, and he wouldn't really let me have it, but he did show me a bunch of stuff on the map and whatnot. I was like, you just tell me where the soybeans are, and I'll leave you alone.
Right.
Because everything is so late being planted down here, and it's going to be fantastic. That means the beans are going to be green by the time season opens. That's a big thing. If they turn yellow,
Yeah.
they're dead. They're dead to deer. They won't touch them again until it's so cold they can barely walk.
Yep.
But the beans will be short and they'll be green, which means that they cannot bed out in the middle of them.
Mm.
They're going to have to work from somewhere to that food source. So they're planting all that stuff right now. And if my calculations are correct, this should be a great early season
Hmm.
as far as the WMA that I'm hunting.
Yeah.
But no,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good.
No, I was just going to say, I sometimes forget about the ag aspect of it because a lot of the public I hunt around me has zero ag. Like it's a lot of big woods, I guess. Where there's not. I mean, I'm thinking of like even the stuff local to me that's I wouldn't classify as like big woods because it's just not huge, like thousands upon thousands of acres. Um, there's really not any. There's really not any ag around, so I'm always having to kind of like the way I kind of play my trail camera game is I rarely ever use MRI, and it's almost all um, based off like the prior year to 2 year worth of inventory of how deer use a spot seasonally, and it's almost always kind of related to community scrapes and the times that those will turn on. and stuff like that. I almost hunt dates as opposed to deer per se.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to that early season hunt and the ag, all that aspect, it's kind of annoying that you can run cameras, from May till, September 15th, whatever. You can have regular cameras, cell cameras. The last 2 days before season, you might as well just, if you ain't got a deer that's just on a serious pattern, your best bet is to get out and grab your keys and drive and use your binoculars and find the deer, like a deer that's using an ag field, and catch him where he's coming out and take that to your advantage. Um,
Hmm.
like I said, there's nothing better than spotting a deer in velvet popping out of the woods the day or 2 days before season, because chances are he's probably going to do it again. Just getting in there without bumping him and getting the right wind to hunt him is normally the hardest part.
Right. Because at that point they're still slaves of their stomach, and so they're just
Absolutely. And even, sometimes they meander off and jump half a mile or a mile, whatever, while they're still in velvet. And then I've killed a couple that, they got blood on their antlers,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
they're still coming to the fields in daylight for 3 or 4 days after they drop it. But eventually there's going to be a switch flip, and every camera that I have out will be absolutely useless.
Right. So what do you do then? I mean, are you at that point? Do you shift cameras kind of in toward funnels, dough bedding, scrapes, rubs, etc. Do you kind of make a change, or do you then just at that point go, all right, early season's over. It's now all about in season scouting and just woodsmanship, and not necessarily relying on cameras at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And like going back to what you said about learning a piece of public over years, I'll have a few non-sales in place for when the shift happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll normally spend the last week or 2 weeks of September. I call it the Great Gather, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll spend 2 days, 3 days, whatever it takes to gather every single camera that I feel like is not producing, and they're all going to get moved. Normally, they won't get moved on a day where I'm just going to go hang cameras. I'll take one or two with me, three, whatever, in my pack when I go out. And like you said, hanging on that MRI.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that first week of October around here, they start laying down a couple scrapes, and you can normally tell which ones are going to be, uh, just a whatever scrape, and then, one that they're just absolutely going to tear up and all the way through the middle of December, but
Mm-hmm.
just whatever.
Right.
But I'll always have a couple cameras in place, for the shift. But normally there's about a week long period where I'm gathering, and I'm going to, move them all again.
Right. So you're really kind of doing like your in-season scouting just to kind of confirm. It sounds like things that you've learned from getting familiar with a piece, and you're using those cameras to almost just kind of validate that, yet what I thought was the case is the case, and where this sign is going to be a spot of interest, essentially, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. So, man, I wanna make a hard transition here, dude, and I want to talk about you putting all these pieces together and talk about some of these hunts. Like that. So, like I said at the top, this is how I kind of learned about you. Is was when Josh's page kind of found you on there, and then stumbled onto your YouTube channel. And the first hunt that I ended up watching was your Indiana hunt. So, I guess I want to start with. It was interesting. I don't want to give the video away because I want people to go actually watch it. But you were
Yeah.
you
Drive that traffic.
right there you go. Doing it for the grant. I'm just kidding. um, you made the decision. You were like, "Am I going to Indiana or am I going somewhere else?" And you kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to go to Indiana." Right. That was kind of like the beginning of it. So when you were headed there, was the deer you ultimately killed? Like, what made you? I guess go to Indiana that day. Was this a deer? Was there a particular deer that you were after, or was it more so that like, hey, I have an Indiana tag that I have to fill, so I'm going to go to Indiana?
That was pretty much it. I think I can't remember if Kentucky's season was in just yet, as far as gun season. But I knew that Indiana gun season had been in for about oh God, I'm going to butcher this, 5 or 6 days at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the spot that I was going to in Indiana was the one that I was telling you, like, I'm going to kill a deer in here with my kayak, and I'm not going to kill one anywhere else. Um, that spot was a place that I don't hunt. I do not hang cameras in there. I don't go in there. I don't touch it. I will not go in there period until at least the last week of October. That place is an actual, like, it's like a sanctuary for these deer. It's got everything you can imagine for a deer to escape severe hunting pressure, and that's, I mean, and they get it. I mean, it gets bad. And I think actually I wrote an article for Peterson's Bow Hunting Magazine. It's supposed to be published in October on this hunt. But actually, that morning I woke up to get out there super early, and it was pouring down rain. And I'm like, I'm not getting soaked. I'm just gonna set my alarm and keep checking every 30 minutes. So I did what I do best, and I turned my alarm off, and I woke up super late.
Nice.
And I was like, all right. I was like, if I go now, I'll be in a tree well after daylight. But it's the time of year. It was November 18th. It's like the time of year you need to be in a tree.
Mhm.
So after leaving McDonald's, I sat there at the light, and if I went right, I'd go to Kentucky. If I went left, I'd go to Indiana, and I pulled out and went left. And as I was unloading my kayak, it was gray light. And man, the entire time I was rowing down that creek, you could just hear gunshots every single direction. I was like, man, just keep shooting. Just let them have it. Scare the hell out of them, because I know exactly where they're heading. And sure enough, I was able to take my kayak, not as far as I'd like to, but the water was coming up. So I beached the kayak, I got out, and from there I jumped in another ditch and walked through water to make sure, I kept myself in the water. I went underwater with one of my boots, so ticked off, so my foot's wet, it's cold. And from that ditch, I got out and got in a slough. So I only had to probably cross 20 yards
Mhm.
of dry land to get in the water again. And I followed that slough edge all the way around. And like you said, where I was going was like, if they smell me, they're way too close. They need to be shot.
Right.
But I followed the slough edge all the way around, picked a tree that I had previously found a creek crossing on years ago. I couldn't see the creek crossing. There's a cane thicket in front of me, about 100 yards, and it was right on the other side of it. But climbed up the tree, actually forgot the bridge to my saddle like a big dummy.
I saw that
Somehow,
actually.
for some reason, I took it off. So I had to one stick up this tree like an idiot. But I made it work, and I got set up. And so I had the slough behind me. I had the wind blowing in my face, and I had the sun behind me as well. My thermals, my scent, everything was being pulled behind me towards that water. It was perfect. I mean, I could not ask for a better setup. And I thought, man, this is a great situation for a buck to just come walking down the slough, catching everything. He's got safety to this side because there's water. He's scent checking everything on this side. Just one of them things you dream up, and it never seems to really happen. And I wasn't up in the tree about an hour, and I seen a small buck come cruising by on the far side of the creek, and then I had a doe walk right underneath me, and she kind of had that look about her, like everybody can tell, like, or they say, you hear them say, like, oh, that doe was in heat. Like, I don't have no way of telling. I think their tail is just a little funky or something. But
Right.
I mean, she walked right under the tree, right where I was, and she was behind me, and I was watching her. When I turned around, I saw a wall of tines, and it instantly went into total freakout mode. Everybody acts like they're some professional, and they stay super calm and this and that. I am not that person. I will never be that person, and I will never be ashamed for it. I I cut it out in the video, but I mean, this deer was frantically looking for her, and I was like, I need him to hear something. I was bleating at him with my can call. I was grunting at this deer. He never would hear me because he was moving,
Mhm.
and he moved off the other direction. At this point, he's probably 125 yards, and he finally stopped. And this can call, I've learned that if you actually the little hole on the bottom of them, you can blow in them, and it
Mhm.
sounds way better.
Oh wow, I never thought of that.
I've tried. I'm telling you, I don't really care for those calls, like turning them up and down, because they sound. It's almost like elk hunting. You don't want to blow that same Primo's elk call. Everybody in the world has.
Right.
But if you blow in it, it sounds a little bit different. I think it sounds more realistic. Well, that got his attention. I saw his ears perk up. I did it one more time, and he turned and looked my way, and I was like, I'm going to set the stage for this deer, and I'm fixing to kill him. And I grabbed my grunt call, and I started grunting on that call. I pointed it towards him and I worked my way away from him. But that's all it took.
Hmm.
And he come running on a dime, and I was hoping he would stop, but he never stopped. And he was zigzagging towards me. And at this point, he's 10 yards right underneath me, and he stops for just a second. I almost pulled the trigger, and I just shot him right between the shoulder blades. And I'm glad I didn't. But I would have wished that I had him if he ran off,
Right.
because he eventually caught something. It's hard to say what he smelled, if my ground center, this or that, but he freaked out. You can hear it in the video. You can't see him. I kind of hate that, but it is what it is. But he freaks out, and somehow he stopped 10 yards away, quartering away, and I was able to take my bow straight up in the air and bring it down on the other side of the tree. And I'm telling you, the second that I settled that pin and put my finger back on the trigger, he looked up and was looking right at me. And I mean, I buried it in that offside shoulder. And there's no better feeling after years of disappointment than watching a nice one run off and fall over within a sight. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
It was a great buck too, man. Like how far back was was the kayak trip? Like how far did you have to kayak to get back to that spot? Was it pretty secluded in general?
yes. The only way to get to that area is either with the kayak, and you're going to do some serious work even with the kayak to get to them,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to walk in from private. And the
Okay.
people that own the property around it, I've already asked, I've tried. They hate people that hunt, so
Hmm.
they don't let nobody hunt, which works out to my advantage.
Right. Right.
Um,
So there's no way to access that by walking on the private.
I mean, if you want to put on some hip waders and be a man, you probably can, but
Right.
I've never seen anybody do it. I've ran into one other person back there, and he's kind of like me. He's like, man, I've been coming back here for 15 years, and you're the first person I've ever seen.
Wow.
So me and him are real tight, and we keep it to ourselves. And
Yep.
we actually, I will contact him every time I'm going in there to let him know. I was like, hey, I'm going to go in there. Are you in there? Do you got any cameras you want me to grab? This, that, blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
So
Using the buddy
nope.
system when you meet someone who's as into it as you are and you're in similar areas, it's you be cool with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's a cool guy, and he was super tickled for me.
Nice.
He was kind. I told him the night before, I was like, I might go in there, and he's like, well, I'll just go somewhere else in case you decide to go there. So kind of
Nice.
felt bad about that one, but oh well.
So how did you feel when you walked up on it, man?
Um, well, I don't know, man. I just haven't had a lot of instances where I've been able to sit behind a great deer and enjoy it. My 2011 Velvet deer, I shot him and gut shot him with a rage. And it took me 3 days to find him in 90-degree heat,
Oh
and
man.
he was not pleasant to sit there and enjoy.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer. I've killed a couple, deer that just tickled me to death, but just nothing that blew me out of the water. My 2018 Kentucky buck, he was nice, about 143-inch deer, and I got to enjoy that. And then the Tennessee deer a week later ended up getting eaten by coyotes overnight on a decision to back out, which I backed out one time in my life, and it's burned me bad. Um, and then, leading up to there, I hadn't killed a real big one in a few years, and finally getting to just sit behind him and enjoy him and just appreciate him. It's a great feeling, man. To watch, to kill an animal is fantastic, but to literally put an arrow in that deer, and I cannot remember the amount of seconds. I think it's like 11 seconds from the time that I shoot him to the time he's fallen over and he is out of blood and he is dead. It's like less than 15 seconds. That
Mm-hmm.
deer didn't even know what happened.
Yep.
And that's a great feeling. I mean, there's nothing else out there that compares to that as a hunter, knowing that
Yeah.
you made a clean, ethical kill. Because I've been on the opposite side of it plenty of times, and it's a gut wrenching feeling. So
Yeah.
just the fact that I could kill him quick was a great feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always nice to watch them fall. Like for a multitude of reasons, it happens quick, so you're thankful for that. That way, it's just a quick and ethical kill. The other part is too is you're not going to be searching, like the anxiety of like what if isn't there.
Oh God,
You
I
know.
couldn't see him. Like after he hit the ground, like I knew he fell over, but I could not see him anymore. And I'm like, I know he's dead right over there. But even like seeing him fall over, I still second guessing myself, dude. And
Yeah.
that's just where I am.
Yeah, there's no worse feeling. I remember whenever I shot my buck in Iowa, and I made it was 16 yards, and I watched the arrow like just disappear like right into the boiler room. You know what I mean? And he mule kicked and jumped and went about 20 yards and just stopped and turned around and was like looking because he had no clue what had just happened. You know what I mean? And then he just turned and started walking away from me real slow. Like, I mean, you could tell he was hurt. Like he was sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm in the tree, like, fall down, fall down, fall down. And there was just like this little turn he made, and then there was like a little dip that he went down over, and then he disappeared. And he wasn't like running, so I didn't hear him like crashing through the woods or anything like that. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I know that was like it might have been a heart shot for sure. Was both lungs. Like I can't believe he didn't go down. And so I started questioning. Like I was in the tree, and I was literally like, did I freaking miss him? You know what I mean? Like I was just like had so much anxiety, and then I mean I went and found him. He didn't go but 40 yards maybe from where I shot him. So yeah, he was literally like 40 yards from the tree. He was just out of sight. But yeah, there's no worse feeling than just being unsure when you're walking around going like, did I kill him? Did I not? Do I need to back out? When you watch him fall, you're like, you can actually celebrate and breathe a sigh of relief.
Yes, absolutely. And I celebrate hard.
Nice. Nice. All right, so now we're gonna transition to the Kentucky hunt. So how did that all come about? I mean, that was late season, right?
Yes,
And Kentucky muzzleloader, right?
correct.
And this deer, did you know anything about this deer, or was this again just kind of hunting for opportunity?
This was a deer that I wanted to kill.
Okay.
Seen him a few times last year. My buddy Tim passed him last year. And between me and Tim and Josh, actually, um, all of us had encounters with this buck.
Hmm.
And Josh had him at 40 yards
Oh wow.
a month before I killed him. And I don't know if Josh didn't feel comfortable with the shot or just didn't realize that he was close enough to shoot. We talked about it a couple times, but
Actually, he
no,
talked about it on the podcast. Because he said he thought he was further away than he was.
oh man, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this now.
Yeah, if it's the same deer,
It
I
is.
think he said that it was, he had one really good opportunity that last year, and in hindsight he should have took the shot, but he thought the deer was further away than it was. He just missed, like his eyes were playing tricks on him essentially.
Yeah, I think Josh sat there and watched him tear up a cedar tree for I think 10, 15 minutes or
Oh
something like
wow,
that. At
man.
this point, I'm I think I'm like 400 or 500 yards from Josh at this point when this is happening. And he's telling me which deer it is. I'm like, come on, man, just kill him. I want to see him up close so bad. But no, he was a really cool deer. Biggest bodied deer I've ever killed. Um, Nothing just crazy about him. Like I said, a lot of the deer that I've killed, most people won't even pick up their gun or bow on. Um, he's a mid 40s deer. I think he was like right at 146 and some change. But he was basically an 8 point. So he's a pretty dang good 8 point.
Yeah, dude,
But he
he
had,
was a hammer eight, dude. That's a hammer eight.
oh, I mean, I did in trail cam pics, you just don't realize sometimes how big or small they are. And that deer grew
Mm-hmm.
substantially when I got to him. But that deer was kind of like it was a full blown 4 month game of cat and mouse. You know, getting him here, getting him there. I'd check a camera on the complete opposite side of the WMA, and that's where he'd been hanging out for 2 weeks. There was no rhyme or reason to this deer other than he was just moving away from pressure. Um, yeah, and I think, let's see, I mean, he multiple times I'd walk in and past a camera, and I got them to where they transmit every 2 3 whatever 4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and there'd be no doubt like I'd get a picture of him like cruising through an area, and sure enough, I mean I was in there 20 minutes after he was, so I know he was either using those areas to watch people come in or whatever it was. He was just always one step ahead of me. I wish instead of killing him we could just sit down and talk with him and be like, all right, so when did you catch me here, and what tipped you off on this spot, and where the hell have you been sleeping during October or whatever, but
Right.
you can't.
Right.
But one night, I think it was So that late muzzleloader season, I think, is 7 days, and it like poured the first 3 days of it. In the area that I was hunting, it's a place that I use my kayak. Um, I sat in front of this laptop like I'm doing right now. I'm looking at the area as we speak, and I started just like taking the outline tool and outlining all the places that I had seen him, but he disappeared from, until I finally got this little circle, and I was like, I haven't ever had a camera in there, and I don't think I've ever even hunted that. I've walked through it one time in the summertime. I was like, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to give it a shot. And this area normally is almost impassable to get through foot and or through the water.
Mm.
When I say that, is you've got to come through private to get to it, and the water is normally so low that unless the kayak has nothing in it, it won't float on the water. I mean, you're pushing across mud when it's all said and done.
Right.
The rising river water, whatever levels, was able to get that water level up enough to get back in that area
Mm.
finally. And that morning, I took one stick, I think my lone wolf assault, and the muzzleloader, and I was on the edge. Like, let's see, how do I explain this? It's kind of hard to explain. So it's like this really steep drop off. You've got a creek bottom, and on the other side, over by the private crop fields, it's another really steep rise, and then you've got the fields.
Mm-hmm.
In the bottom was like if you took like a Kansas drainage
Mm-hmm.
and you spread it out over about 150 yards. That's what it looked like. It's
Okay.
got the taller grasses in it. It's got the funky growing trees. It's got cane thickets. It's got a little creek that runs through it, and the creek was to the top. And if it had rained any more, it would have flooded that entire bottom.
Mm.
Um, I set up on the high rise with the sun at my back, and the wind was like dead calm. So I didn't really know what my stuff was doing. I was just hoping once the sun came up, it was going to start drifting towards it.
Right.
Um, Literally, as soon as like I pulled my scope up and I could see through it, I decided I'm going to get down. And I'm a fan of Zach Barenbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't, but I love his rattling techniques, and I've
Mm.
kind of taken to him. I mean, I've done them, just not as you know realistic as he used to. But climb down. Actually, I jumped down out of the tree stand. It's kind of I was like 6 feet off the ground. Jumped down with the rattling antlers, and did a super realistic rattling sequence, breaking logs, breaking sticks, running. I mean, I was literally running around in circles, clashing these things together. I threw him down. I climbed back up, and within 5 minutes, he was standing at the creek edge.
Mm.
And it was almost like he was kind of surprised that he couldn't cross it where he normally could.
Mm-hmm.
And man, like big deer do, they don't give you any time to process a damn thing. Um, it's just happening, and you got to think quick. So he gave me about a 10-second decision of whether I want to shoot or not, because at any point he could just turn around and leave. So I braced my hand on the tree and kind of laid my muzzleloader across it like a rest, and basically 125 free-handed shot, 125 yard free-handed shot, and I saw him kick, smoke cleared, and I barely caught glimpses of him going through the grass, and I heard a crash, and I just stared for the longest time, like if he walks off or runs off, I should be able to see him. Long story short, somehow I made a perfect shot on this deer, and he was dead just out of sight behind a little patch of cane. And I think what that deer was actually doing was using that cane thicket to sleep in the middle.
Mm.
Actually, I know for a fact he was, because after I killed him and gutted him and celebrated and whatnot, I was like, I'm going to walk over to that thing, and it's probably a 30-yard by 30-yard section of cane. And I mean, right and dead in the middle of it, dude. He had it laid over and just stinking in there, hair everywhere. It's like,
Mm.
man, that deer was living in this spot until something ran him out of it.
Yep. He's probably been there every time he's disappeared on you. That's probably where he's been.
I wish I knew. It's
Yeah.
one of the times I wish I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with him.
Right. Right. So is that a spot, do you think, I mean, first off, hell of a deer, dude. I mean, he's a hammer. Watching the video, like to your point, when you like, so obviously I don't want to give it away, but I saw the trail camera pictures that were part of the video. And you're right. Like when you see the trail camera pictures, you're like, man, is that the same deer? You know what I mean? Because like when you see after you shoot him and you see him on video, you're like, damn, like that is a big deer. Like on trail camera, you're like, oh, that's a good deer. But in person, like after you shot him, you're like, damn, man, that is a hammer buck, a hammer 8 point.
I think it's like some of them Kansas deer. They look halfway small, but their 300-pound bodies make their antlers look a little bit, a
Yeah,
little bit smaller.
yeah.
His he just had a big old Iowa-sized body for a buck around here, and his brow tines were enormous,
Oh, dude,
and
yeah.
he carried his mass out pretty well. And I'll tell you this, um, the Ascend kayak 12T weight rating is full of crap. You can push it because I had to put logs in the back of my kayak to keep the nose from tipping underwater.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Jeez, man, that's hilarious. Do you think this is a spot that based on like now that you've had a chance to hunt it, right? And after you did your kind of gumshoe work to figure out like here's all the like the beautiful minds work of like all your circles and where they connect and like stuff like that. Do, do you think that is a spot that would hold a mature deer year over, or do you think this was just kind of like a one time deal where that buck just kind of found a hidey hole and it may or may not produce again?
I think that it depends on the deer
Mhm.
for one, but if you find another deer with a personality like him, it's a gold mine. I mean,
Mhm.
it's got sanctuary as far as like grass. Like he was tough to see, man. He blended in with everything down there. It's got the cane thickets to hide in. He's got the water. He's got the ag. I mean, he's got everything that he needs. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He could live there in that 300, 400 yard circle as long as he wants to.
Mhm.
And he could do it from September till April. I mean, he could do it as long as he wants to. That's
Right.
what I'm getting at. And deer have everything they need right there in that one little spot. So I've
So
actually
go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, I've got I did put a camera down there within 20 yards of where I killed him about 2 weeks ago.
There you
So
go. Yeah. Well, what I was going to ask is, so you kayaked in. Is there any other public access other than kayak, or is it kind of like the other spot where it's like, yeah, if someone wants to be, a real man about it, they could get in there, but they got a lot of work to do.
oh, yeah, there's not very many access spots on this particular piece,
Hmm.
but there's definitely places that there's a ton of foot traffic.
Okay.
And I mean, you could come in from the other way. You're just you're gonna hike to do it, and
Mm.
to get to him once you kill him, it's gonna involve getting wet.
Right. Right. Yeah. It sounds like you got a nice little hidey hole there, man. Similar to the that spot in Indiana, where it's just those are the best, man. Like the places like that's what I think sometimes is maybe newer hunters or whatever. When people see other people having success or whatever, it's like, well, how did you make that happen? It's like, man, usually it's only one way. It's work. You gotta
Yeah,
kind of
you're right.
understand the deer, and then you got to be, willing to outwork your competition, essentially.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, these new hunters is like, what's up with these guys that they just want to jump in, grab the newest $1,500 bow, and they only want to kill 150s plus. It's like, man, you're missing the point. Like,
Hmm.
build your way up to that stuff. Like, I thought I saw a chart the other day that talked about the stages of becoming a hunter.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like you're a kid where you just enjoy going with your dad. You start to venture out on your own. You get a little taste of it, and you become, a passer. You become a trophy hunter. Then after you kids your fill of you got your wall full. You're just ready to take kids again.
Hmm.
It's like just just enjoy it and hunt the way you want to hunt. And
That's
I don't
just it,
know. I
man.
guess that's all I can really say.
Well, not just that. I think just hunt deer, like kill some does, like,
I mean, I've killed some decent deer.
yeah.
I've never killed anything over the top. And I promise you, when I go, if it's getting late in the year, I've got no problem shooting a deer that, I mean, I wouldn't touch my bow in October. And that's just the way I am.
Right.
Especially out of state, I
Hmm.
want to fill tags. I want to have a good story. As long as the hunt has a good story to it, it changes everything.
Hmm.
Like if I'm just gonna walk in down this field edge out of state and climb up a tree and a 120-inch deer comes walking by, that's not that fun to me.
Hmm.
But If it's later in the year, it's been tough hunting. I kayak in somewhere super remote, climb up. The weather's just nasty, and that deer comes walking by. Then I'll be just as excited as the deer I shot this year, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just me.
Yeah.
Because there's a story behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's always just kind of if it makes my heart race.
Absolutely.
Like if I get excited about it in the moment,
Oh, if that was the case, I mean, I'd shoot every doe that walked by.
well, that's what I say, man. It's, I still get excited when I see does coming, especially if it's early in the year and I know I'm in a spot that I'm like, yeah, there could be a good buck come by. That'd be cool. But I'm in this spot because, I'm going to shoot the first doe I see, you know what I mean? Type of thing. It's like, and if I hear him coming, dude, it's like, I'm getting jacked. You know what I mean? Like, it's just all there is to it. Like, I can't help it. But that's
Right.
the one thing of doing this show for as long as I have, like all the killer hunters I've had a chance to talk to and have on. There's a couple common threads, that they all kind of have, and one of them is every single one of them that's a killer is just, they've killed a lot of deer, cause like, I think especially new hunters don't recognize that, man, there's a lot that happens in that 10, if you're lucky, maybe 15 seconds that you have to make to make a shot. You know what I mean? Like outside of just the mechanics of shooting the bow, it's the identification of the deer. Am I shooting that deer? And then it becomes, when is the right time to draw? You know what I mean? Like, when do I stop the deer? Do I stop the deer? You know what I mean? And then it's like you have to execute the shot. So there's a lot that happens in that short period of time. And it's like, and you don't get good at it by not doing it, but like once every 10 years. It's like all the guys that I've talked to that are killers, man, it's like they've laid down piles of deer over the course of time from their youth until, today, and, they all, kind of talk about it, that it's like, you got to have that behind the bow time of just slinging arrows and filling tags. And then when you do that enough, those hard parts of it that are where you're unsure about what to do, they just become natural,
Yep. There's nothing better than shooting does, and it's almost like a basket. Well, how do I put this? It's like a basketball player that's having an off night, but he finally sees that ball go through the hoop a couple
Mm-hmm.
times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once you put yourself in that situation on when to pick your bow up, when to move, when to draw, when to take the shot, and you watch it, blow through that doe perfect, and they pile up, that gives you so much confidence in making a shot, later on when it matters.
Right.
Matters more. I'm not saying a doe doesn't matter.
Right.
Forgive me. That's everybody's mindset, and they can pretend like it's not, but they, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No. 100%. Yeah. AKA shooter gonna shoot.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? To Kobe Bryant, shooter's gonna shoot.
That's right.
Cool, man. Well, hey, dude, I got one last question for you before I let you get going. I like to ask this question. Speaking of shooters gonna shoot, it's a basketball question. So you've
Oh
got,
boy.
yeah. Well, it's not really. It's framed around basketball. You're creating a 3-on-3 basketball team of hunters, hypothetically, and these 3 hunters, your life depends on them filling tags hunting public land. They can be dead, alive, people you know, people you don't know, famous, not famous, whoever it is. If you had 3 tags that had to get filled on public land and your life depended on it, what 3 hunters would you be putting on your team?
Am I one of these or no?
You can be. I
No.
kind of always
No.
assume that if when I get asked this question, I'm the coach and I'm just picking my team.
Oh gosh, man. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings for not mentioning them.
Well, we're all friends here, man.
You should have told me this earlier when we were texting this morning. I could have been thinking about it. Now you put me on the spot.
See, it's more fun when it's on the spot now.
Yeah. Uh, I gotta say Josh is
Mhm.
definitely one of them.
Mhm.
Personally that I know. Um, I'm gonna say Dan Infalt.
Mhm.
And gosh, man, I don't know. I don't know another one off the top of my head.
Third
I,
one's always the
I'm gonna
hardest one.
I'm gonna say Zach Fernball.
Okay.
I'm not a hunting public fanboy.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, there's a couple of them that just rubbed me the wrong way. But I really like Zach and a couple of them other guys. But I'd say if I was the coach, I'd be putting Josh, Dan, and Zach in.
Yeah, that's a good team, man. I think you're going to be safe. I think you're all right.
I think so.
Nice, man. Well, hey, dude, before I let you get going, let people listening know where they can find out more about you, they can follow along with you, and how they can watch some of these videos.
Let me pull this up because I always butcher my own name. My name on Instagram is just my full name underscore D03 or D03. I don't know which one it is. Jacob Emery underscore D03. And then my YouTube is D03 Outdoors. Like I was telling you, man, if you go back far enough, there's some cringy hunts on there, so beware.
That's all right, man. Everyone gets their start somewhere. I enjoyed the videos, dude. I think anyone out there listening, you should check them out. Not just the hunts we talked about today, but there's a handful of other ones that I really got. I think I was watching them over the course of the weekend. I just like your approach, man. It's refreshing. It's no BS content. There's nothing slippery about it. It's just a dude that likes hunting and is passionate about it, and it comes through in the videos. So, I think you did a killer job, dude.
I seriously appreciate that, bud.
Yeah, man. Everyone check out those videos. Brother, thanks for coming on, man. I hope to talk to you soon, man.
Yes, sir. Keep up.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.